Okay, so for this video, we're gonna talk about fear, which is like probably like the first or second thing that a lot of writers struggle with. And when I say fear, what we're talking about specifically is just fear of really putting your work out and putting your work out publicly. Like that's one of the biggest fears that writers have, because it's like, are people really gonna care? Is your writing good enough? Are you going to put it out and only 2 people are going to write it? Are you going to write a book and like only your friends are going to buy it? So that fear can be actually really stifling and really crippling, especially if you're new to writing, and especially if writing is something that's just like not very, you're not very comfortable with. So it's totally understandable. And even for writers who write every single day like myself, it's still a thing. So I just want you to first know that you're not alone. This is definitely something that every writer deals with in some aspect or another, right? It just depends on how bad. For me, I think I could take my fear all the way back to when I was probably in high school. I always wanted to be a writer. And I think you're going to hear me say that a lot, but I say it for different reasons. And the reason I'm saying it now is because imagine always knowing something about yourself, right? Which I always did. I always knew I wanted to be a writer, but then not telling anybody about that thing. Like nobody, like very, very, very few people knew I wanted to be a writer. Some people knew I was good at writing, so there were some teachers and stuff like that who knew I was good at writing, and they would encourage me for sure. So I did have that. But as far as me saying I want to be a writer and I want to be an author, those are things that I kept internalized for a very long time. I would say it probably wasn't until I got to university where I was comfortable even saying I want to be a writer. And maybe even after that, when I started writing my first book, where I was like halfway comfortable with even saying I want to be a writer. So I think the fear of just like admitting it and saying it out loud is just like step one to try to get over that, right? Like that was really stifling for me. And I think my first foray into actually kind of putting myself out there, because when I first started writing, I started blogging. That was the first thing I did. I just started like writing for different websites, and like the first website I think I wrote for was like a hip hop website called Hip Hop Canada, and then I wrote for some other websites. But I never ever wrote about myself. Never. Like I would never get deep about how I was feeling, any joyful moments, any like frustrating or sad moments. I never ever wrote about anything personal until after I self-published my first book, Thoughts of a Fractured Soul. I was looking for different ways to engage with audiences, and so I started blogging a little bit more. Let's say I got a little bit more vulnerable with my blogging, and I wrote this piece called Why 9 to 5 Won't Work for Millennials, and the piece blew up like 80,000 reads or something like that, some ridiculous number in a very short period of time. And so I had all these eyes on it, and it made me really, really nervous to look at the comments, because I didn't want to read the negative comments. You know, I didn't want to hear what people had to say. It was really, really frightening for me. But what I realized is once I did read the comments, it wasn't that bad. You know, there were some negative comments. Some people commented on my grammar, which was really annoying, because I thought that piece was really well written, but whatever. Some people made comments about my mom, like somebody said, oh, I feel really sorry for your mom, just because I wrote an article that said like millennials just look at 9 to 5 differently, and here we are in 2022 and there's almost no such thing as 9 to 5 anymore. So I was actually kind of right. Anyway, my point is that it was really tough to put myself out there, but once I did and I saw the reactions, and I saw that there are people out there that actually felt the same way I felt, I really focused on that and didn't worry about all the negative comments, because you really can't please everybody. This is art. Writing is art. So you're never going to please everybody with art, right? Like everyone's going to have their own opinion. So for me, that was kind of the first foray into public writing, and into writing about myself. And then, I mean, from that, Cry was born, right? Here we are years and years later. And Cry is what it is today. It's this amazing community of readers and writers who are just kind of connected by the power of vulnerability and creativity. So for me, I think if I had to give any advice on how to get over your fear as a writer, I'll probably start with 2 things. I would say practice and then consistency. And those sound similar, but there's a difference. So I would say practice, and very specifically practice on your weaknesses. Because what practice does is that it allows you to build confidence. Once you start seeing yourself get better at writing, you'll start taking a little bit more chances and you won't be as scared to put yourself out there because you're confident. You feel like, oh, my writing's actually good. This story I'm telling is actually good. I'm not as afraid to put it out anymore, or I'm not as concerned about the criticism, because you yourself feel that whatever the writing, whatever the criticism is, you feel confident in the piece that you put out. You know that's the best that you can do at that time, and that's all that should matter. So practice, and specifically practice on your weaknesses. The other thing I would say is make sure you're being consistent. I write every single morning. Doesn't even matter what the situation is, I'm gonna write every single morning. I'm not saying you have to write every single morning, but you should find some kind of consistent pattern in your writing. I would say try to find at least 1 hour a day, 3 times a week. I would say try to do that, and if you could do it at the same time every day, great. If you can't, doesn't matter. Still try to find that hour at least 3 times a week. And what consistency does is that it starts putting you into routine. And once you start getting into a routine, it starts like it calms down some of the nerves that you have around like actually writing, because there's a lot of nerves around writing. Like looking at a blank screen is very, very intimidating. But if you get to that blank screen in the morning, or that for your 1 hour a day, and then you write 5 words, great, you've done something. You sat down, you wrote 5 words, you've accomplished something. That is an accomplishment. Then you do it again and you write 10 words, then you do it again and you write 15 words. Like those are accomplishments. Don't even stress about, oh, I only wrote a paragraph today, or I only got 5 words done today, or I only got a page done today. It doesn't matter. That's not what this is about. Consistency is about really getting you emotionally prepared to be a good writer, and emotionally prepared for like getting out of your head, and getting like, or making it easier for yourself to actually put your work out publicly, I would say. So practice first, for sure, and practice specifically on your weaknesses, and then get consistent and start building some kind of routine that works for your life. But I would suggest at least an hour at a time, at least 3 times a week, and you'll see improvement within like a month. That I'm pretty sure of. Okay, I'm gonna leave you with the challenge, or actually 2 challenges. First one, I want you to identify your biggest weakness as a writer, whatever that is. It could be something emotional, like you really care about what other readers are gonna think before you even start writing anything. That's a weakness, that's a problem. Write that down. If that's your biggest weakness, write it down. It could be more technical, so maybe you struggle with grammar or sentence structure or something like that. So that's fine too, that's a weakness, write it down. As long as it's your biggest weakness, and it's whatever that thing that is stopping you from actually writing, think about it like that. So identify it, write it down. That is your challenge for this week. That's the first challenge for this week. The second challenge I'm gonna leave you with is find a time in your schedule, whatever that time is, find an hour 3 times a week in your schedule. Whatever that is. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning, it could be 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it could be 6 a.m. I'm a 6 a.m. person. I used to be a 5 a.m. person, but not anymore. I'm a 6 a.m. person, so that's when my schedule starts. I write from 6 to about 9 every morning. So I want you to find an hour 3 days a week in your schedule that you're gonna commit to writing. Put that in your Google Calendar, in your iPhone calendar, whatever it's called. Put that in your calendar right now to make sure that you get an alert every time that those times pop up. Those are the 2 challenges I really, really want you to focus on this week to get you started on this writing journey. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe, leave some comments, tell us what your biggest fear is, tell us what the biggest thing that you struggle with is, and we'll reach back out to you and give you some tips on how to get over that, or we'll just have a conversation, because this is not all about getting over stuff. It's about really just talking through stuff. It's about finding out what's wrong with, or what you need and what kind of help you want, and what our experiences are and how we could possibly help you learn from our experiences. So even if you don't like get over it, you know what I'm saying, or work to get over it, like really just have this conversation and join this community and see what we could do, see how we can help each other. Comment, subscribe.